I think there's a lot of value in sustainability. I mean, people have quoted like billions of dollars investment that will be put into sustainability. So I think if you see sustainability professionals as your value creators, that changes the game almost immediately, because you can drop them in any scenario and they'll find a way to do things better.
Welcome back to The Responsible Edge, the podcast exploring how to balance profit with purpose in an increasingly complex world. I'm Charlie Martin, your host and founder of TrueMark. Our article this week is titled ESG Reporting Fatigue, the Hidden Burnout Crisis in Sustainability Leadership. And I'm absolutely thrilled to say that our guest, calling in from Trinidad, the Caribbean today, is Kelsey Parsons, Global Sustainability Consultant and former in-house Sustainability Officer with a lot of experience in this space. Kelsey, it's absolutely brilliant to have you on the show. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Now, I should say for anybody that's listening in of when we're actually recording on the 9th of January here. And anybody that's in the UK will know that we are in the midst of an absolute freeze. It's incredibly cold and horrible. And Kelsey, you are yourself, as I mentioned, calling in from Trinidad, the Caribbean. 27 degrees today, everything looking beautiful over there.
It is raining. But it's so warm. I don't have the lovely snow and -3 degrees that's happening over the UK. But, still some rain, but it's all good.
Anyone's watching on YouTube will be able to see your very sunny disposition and then probably be able to see like the lack of at my end. So anyway, great to have you on the show and thank you for fitting this in. Kelsey, I've given you a very kind of broad introduction there as a global sustainability consultant. I'm sure our listeners and viewers would love to have a little bit more depth to you and your roles and the things that you're doing. So could you just give us a little bit of that?
Yeah, of course. So I like to say that I'm a holistic sustainability specialist. And what I mean by that is I don't like to focus just on the environment. I like to know how it's interconnected into profit and purpose and people. And that's really been evident throughout my entire journey in sustainability. So I've done roles to major companies, looking at how they can implement mostly climate change, but also how they can influence their suppliers and people they bring on set, also embrace sustainability to the forefront. Then I've also been an in-house sustainability officer, as you said, working on reporting, because every in-house sustainability person ends up working on some level of reporting, but also looking at product design and embedding sustainability into that, looking at how we can train people on sustainability, and also looking at marketing, how to market sustainability without the lovely G word of greenwashing as well. So yeah, quite well-rounded in terms of what I've worked on, but really exciting journey ahead. And now I've stepped into the consultancy space and supporting organizations with climate, but also with strategies and how to bring people and training people and how to speak about sustainability as well.
As you described there, your experience, which has been kind of multifaceted and sort of been influenced in all the different areas that sort of sustainability touches, is probably going to give you that kind of really, really nice kind of foundation from which you can advise companies on the full sustainability strategy piece. So yeah, timing couldn't be more perfect in that sense.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. It's all interconnected. I think with sustainability, everything is interconnected. And I think having had that experience is really helpful for some of my clients. Then be like, well, actually, if you thought about it this way, because it's connected to this, they're like, oh, okay, that's different.
Can I ask you, this is way off the beaten track question, but I'm just fascinated. Like when it comes to the Caribbean and the Caribbean's kind of, approach to sustainability. I'm sorry, I'm going to huge generalizations here, but where would you because I know that, you and I have connected through your working in Europe and, you obviously are, as I say, work globally, but the Caribbean, where is it at from a sustainability perspective?
I think it's twofold. I think on a governmental level, some of the governments in the Caribbean are really accelerating and pushing ahead. Think about Barbados, for example. They're really embracing sustainability, trying to bring a lot of energy into this, sustainable energy into the system. Then you've got corporate, who I think compared to Europe and even the US are a little bit behind the curve. They're kind of still on the community engagement sort of planting trees side of things. And now we're getting into let's have sustainability strategy. What is climate change? How do we report against climate change? That's sort of now happening. But I think with the Caribbean, what you find is they have a general love for nature. Lovely beaches, some of them have got rainforests, volcanoes. There is quite this understanding that you have to protect what you've got around you. And I think that's a great foundation you don't really see sometimes a lot of different cities, because they tend to be like surrounded by just concrete all the time, whereas it's quite different in the Caribbean.
That's super interesting. Almost there's just that natural, like, cultural respect for the environment around it. One thing I would say is I imagine sitting there in Trinidad looking around at how incredibly beautiful it is. It's probably really easy to say, well, we probably want to maintain this beauty as much as we possibly can. It's something that kind of fits well as a glove, if you like. Kelsey, how did somebody who ultimately has grown up in the Caribbean, if I understand you correctly, or you might change that, but you had this amazing experience growing up in this beautiful part of the world. Like, what ultimately has like driven you to get to this point in your career? You mentioned, I think really interestingly, the fact that you're like, you know, multifaceted and you've got like different angles, if you like, when it comes to your interests in sustainability. But like, why this? Like, why have you chosen this as your career?
Why sustainability? So actually, I have reflected a lot on this recently, and I had a trip in December last year to Costa Rica.
Oh, yes.
I always say Costa Rica is probably one of my favorite places on earth. No disrespect to my own island, or some of the many places I've visited in Europe, and also living in the UK. But I think what really resonated with me this trip is I think this is where I decided I wanted to pursue sustainability when I visited how many other years ago. And it's because Costa Rica has a lot of wealth of nature, but they utilize their nature in a way that's, I think, different to anywhere I've seen in the world. They have this profound of, let's really protect nature, let's be in nature, let's really make sure that, you know, we're having conversations about nature, but also let's make sure that we're earning money while using what we've got around us. I thought that was so unique. I have not seen like another country really truly embrace what it is to be sustainable. And they do that so well, and not just on the whole climate change aspect, or not just let's recycle, let's do all those things, but also people. They have a genuine love for people and each other, and this ease and balance of life. So balance in everything that they do, balance with the world that they interact with, the people that they interact with. And I was like, this is really interesting. How can I turn that into a career? And I remember, like, I did think about this, and I thought, sustainability. Well, it really wasn't more sustainability, more ESG at that time, of how you can look at environmental and social, less on the governance side, because I was a bit more like, I really want to interact with people and talk to people and be with people, but also make sure that they understand the importance of nature and how nature plays such a big role in our lives. And then fast forward, and here I am.
That's a wonderful story. And I have to say, like, it's definitely on my bucket list to head to Costa Rica at a certain point. But I love that idea that, you know, essentially what you described is that, you know, there's a blueprint there, and there's a moment of inspiration for anybody that wants to really kind of see what's possible. But let me pose one like devil's advocate question for you, Kelsey, here, because we like to pose the difficult questions on this. I presume that Costa Rica, from an economic perspective, relies fairly heavily on tourism as one of its key industries. Do you think that's almost therefore kind of one of the great kind of conditions, if you like, for countries that do adopt a really kind of careful approach, the way they manage their environment, similar to the way that we're talking about the Caribbean, perhaps? Do you think that that's almost like a privilege of those countries? Because as soon as you start getting into like the more kind of challenging conflicts of, you know, industry and manufacturing, et cetera, being really key kind of players for a country's economy, it actually becomes really difficult, perhaps even more difficult, to reconcile preservation of nature with kind of economic development.
Yeah, I would say it is a very strong argument, for sure. I think with a lot of islands, or maybe let's say the word developing nations, they have a privilege and a curse in terms of they probably don't have heavy manufacturing industries located, or maybe that investment coming in for those type of industries, but they have this wealth of resource. And I think also it's a bit of two-frame, because in a capitalist society, we don't think of nature as a resource often, right? It's not really the resource that you hear about. So I think it's just more about they see things differently. They see things as, this is a resource for us. We are going to use that, but to use that, we need to protect it. So I think yes and no, it can be a bit of a downfall, but I don't see anybody complaining. The team seems to be quite like, okay, we understand what we've got. We're going to work with that. And they just love life. And why not?
It's a beautiful part of the world, but to see that kind of degree of inspiration behind how you can get sustainability right at a kind of a countrywide level, I think is fascinating as well. But for now, Kelsey, let's move forward with this week's article, if possible. Would you mind just starting by just providing a bit of an overview and summary of the piece, and then perhaps just picking out from it whatever you thought was most interesting in it?
Yeah, of course. So this article really was generally about the reporting overload that we're seeing currently, and a really big reporting trend that we're seeing, and how ESG professionals are having to react to that. And often in reacting to that, they are being essentially buried in paperwork, spreadsheets, KPIs, deadlines, different disclosure requirements. All of that then basically creates a lot of stress. I think any person who's got a lot of paperwork on their desk will be stressed, but this is stress in terms of you want to create an impact and you've got all these deadlines and you're just stuck in a spreadsheet pretty much all day. And how that then turns into people having burnouts, or people leaving the sector, or people just feeling like, well, you joined the sector because you want to change the world. Let's put it that drastically. But you're not changing the world. You're basically a pencil pusher or ticking a box at the moment. So a lot of that moral aspect of moral stress, emotional stress, but also physical stress of dealing with all of the reporting on anybody's plate. Then it also kind of went into kind of how do we fix that? Like, what is sort of the next steps? If we've got all of this, what are we really doing for ESG professionals? So it's a lot about training, a lot about how we can train professionals who are not in the ESG space, from C-suite all the way down to employees maybe on a production floor. But also how we can help with data, because obviously reporting relies on massive amounts of data. So I think in general synopsis, that was basically the article. A lot about how we're getting buried in a lot of paperwork, which I've seen firsthand, and experienced that firsthand, but also how can we kind of find the light at the end of that tunnel as well.
And let me ask you, because you brilliantly have sort of segued onto this, but that was giving my first question to you, is like, how much in this article sort of resonated with your own lived experience versus was there anything that you didn't feel was sort of highlighted strongly enough, or something that you felt was missed in the piece?
Yeah. So yes, it did really resonate with my experience. I think it quoted something called alphabet soup. And alphabet soup was probably me almost every other day when I'm in my in-house position. I mean, you've got CSRD, then you've got ESRS, and then you've got the SEC coming up with their own thing. It's just like alphabet soup galore all the time. But then you also have whiplash. And I think the article also said that you've got whiplash because things are changing all the time, even more so between last year and this year. Like, things are changing in the retro environment. People are saying, we're going to do all of this. Then they're like going to pull it all the way back. We've seen that in Europe in particular. Then you've got people who are like, well, mate, like, going to stay strong on this. But if you're an international organization, for example, and you've got a lot of different countries that you work in or work with, how can you manage having China saying, yes, energy, recycling, waste, tech, you all need to follow this. Then you've got Europe that's maybe teetering the line of, we want to do this, but we need to do it a different way. So I think that a lot resonated with me because I dealt with that on a day-to-day basis for how we can keep driving forward. But also as a professional in the space, how do you keep impact really forefront and not get bottom by all you're doing is reporting and tick boxing all the time? But how can you change that into let's actually drive change. Let's implement this scheme that will help us with the reporting, but dedicating that time to switch back and forth, or probably even not sometimes having the buy-in from stakeholders around you to do that. That definitely resonated with me for sure. in terms of maybe things they kind of maybe got wrong. So I think one of their suggestions, not wrong, but maybe I have a different point of view. One of their suggestions was having a centralized sustainability platform to manage all your data. And I think maybe 2 years ago, I would have said that's a great idea. But, after it's like, when you learn to ride a bike and you're like, yes, I want to go straight to those two wheels. But you're like, oh, I actually need the training wheels first.
Yes.
You're like, that's definitely me with reporting and platforms. I think having a centralized sustainability platform is great. It has its purpose. But if all the other data requests and requirements are in 3,000 different places, some manually, some in a different system, some in a different country, it becomes a bit pointless because you then need to have some manually do something and then connect this with an API. Then this has to connect. And then if you've got duplicates, it just does not help the situation. Quality check. And it becomes chaotic and it actually adds to the stress and adds to that burnout rather than solve it. So I think I would say less of that and maybe more of, can we maybe fix or implement at the foundation level some of those more data platforms among regular data sources. So like if you're in a manufacturing industry, can your ERP and your supply chain system maybe connect and have the same data? Rather than it going this way, it should probably connect this way, and then it's easier for sustainability professionals to jump in into the data.
Is that where, people talk about, the potential impact of AI a lot when it comes to reporting? Like, is this the real challenge for you, that from your sort of experience, that you'd like to see, if AI could do anything, it would be to create those kind of common integrations and systems that just uniform everything? Is that the right word? I don't know. Make everything consistent and easier to access. Is that the key?
I think, yeah, definitely AI can step in there and make things more consistent and connect things to things. So I know, like, for example, sometimes some people will have the weights of a product in one system and then have the supply of that product in a complete other system, but it doesn't connect. But you would think that it will have all the details of this product in one space. And I think that's why AI can actually support sustainability professionals in helping that. And it's not even just sustainability professionals, but also your managers, your supply chain people, your shop floor people. Like, all of that seamless process of data can support not just sustainability, but everybody working within that industry and in that space.
And crucially, on that point, that's how we can use AI potentially to create that kind of short form executive summary piece that can perhaps then influence minds and hearts, perhaps even within the senior leadership of organizations, because the data itself has been made so readily and sort of easily accessible for those individuals. When there's this argument or this suggestion about, if you look at this decade and you look at the experience of kind of ESG and you think of like the heady days of kind of post-pandemic and the type of investment that was going into broadly kind of sustainability initiatives, and you then go into this phase of kind of backlash, if you like, and the regulatory kind of watering down, coupled with this, what seems to be this increasing requirement from a regulatory perspective for reporting, et cetera, like, what's your view of this decade when it comes to ESG and where we are? Like, where have we got to now, and how, when it comes to reporting versus kind of initiative implementation, like, where are we in terms of the balance between the two, and what needs to be done in order to get it better, if that's where you are?
So I'll start with the where are we now with reporting. In honest answers, I don't think everybody really knows because there's a lot of question marks going on. But I think where we are now is we've got a lot of pockets of reporting requirements happening on a sort of a national governmental level of government saying we want people who work within our country or work with our country to have this. And it's very broad. It's very wide. They're asking a lot of questions on everything from biodiversity to climate to your waste, your circularity of your products, to people, like well-being, to health and safety. They're asking a lot. And then you've also got maybe frameworks that existed for a really long time, like the SDG goals, that some people are still using, a lot of people are still using, I should say, that are there, but they're kind of getting maybe a bit sidelined a bit more because the regulatory pressures are maybe a bit more consistent. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag right now with reporting. There's a lot, and none of it is sort of streamlined or maybe consistent across different nations, even different frameworks are in place. Sometimes people have got different definitions, different targets that they're asking that are maybe slightly different to another one. So it's a bit of a lot of question marks and very inconsistent. I would say that's probably where we are at the moment. But there is a lot out there, which is good. Compared to maybe when we started a long time ago, it's good to have variety, but the consistency does not help.
Well, Kelsey, let me ask on that, because I'm gonna press on that. Is it good? Is it good that we have this degree of regulation when it comes to sustainability, and therefore reporting that needs to go hand in hand with that regulation? Because you can't have one without the other. And if we had, and I was reflecting on this, somebody suggested this to me the other day, where we just sort of reflected on the world. Imagine if overnight we just got rid of essentially all sustainability related regulation. What would actually happen? And obviously you can model, a terrible scenario where everybody just goes, oh great, we no longer have to do any of this, so we're just not going to do any of it. Sustainability is now unlearned, and all we're going to think about now is the commercial realization of our organization. That's one outcome. But the other outcome is everybody's sort of bought into the basic principles of sustainability as being a good way to realize long-term value, etc. So to be honest with you, the cart has bolted, or whatever, the horse has bolted, whatever that phrase is, that we're essentially already invested in this and we don't need it anymore. And if we got rid of it, actually we'd have great people like you being able to be creative and innovative and not have to do the due diligence kind of stuff. I know those are two very big extremes that I pitched there, but comment on that for me. What do you think would happen?
Yeah, I don't think we will just abandon sustainability. I don't think that will happen if we got rid of regulations, because I think there is still consumer buy-in. And also sustainability is so multifaceted. You're going to end up doing some aspect of it. You may not call it sustainability, but it exists in some way. If you decide you want to have more diverse hiring, that's sustainability. If you decide, well, actually, let's reuse this component that we always are taking back from site, that's sustainability, even though you might be reusing it because you might be saving costs, or you might be deciding, oh, we can just reuse this and create a new product. It's still sustainability. You may not call it sustainability, but it still exists. So I think if we get rid of all the regulation, the actions will still be there, just may not have to talk about it as much.
Okay, that's my other point really on this, again, if there wasn't the requirement for everybody to report in the same way, and therefore essentially produce the same sort of data outputs, which then turn into the same narratives and the same dialogue, which then makes all of it fairly meaningless anyway from a reporting and a sort of communications perspective, does that not then offer there to be this sort of brilliant sort of breeding ground, if you like, for innovative storytelling about the things that organizations have invested in and initiatives that they've implemented that perhaps others haven't, that they can then speak really confidently about? Again, is that not a potential outcome from going down this very extreme route?
Yes, it is potential outcome, but I think the reason why the regulations and all of this reporting was put in place is because people were lying. You can trust what they were saying, to be honest and quite frank. And people might be doing something and it's actually affecting so many other different things. So that one good thing probably is really horrible for people, or really horrible for maybe the soil in the ground. You don't know. So I think the frameworks were put in place to really support that, what you do might be really good, but you need to think about all of these knock-on effects that happen. And I think even though people have brilliant ideas that might come of it, which is true, we could have that lovely flourishing of these really amazing ideas people to communicate about. But how do you differentiate then from the good and the bad? And are they thinking about more than just what they have brilliant ideas that's come up? Are they thinking wider and more broad?
Can I ask then on that, because it's a really fair rebuttal to my Fairly extreme suggestion, by the way. So we are just playing around with ideas here, just to be absolutely clear. But I want to talk a little bit about like the personal, like the article was about burnout, is about, the sort of the experience of the individual, if you like. And I want to dive in a little bit into your own kind of experience, if that's okay. Like, what does that do to you personally in terms of your motivation and your drive to do your work?
Well, it's draining. Very, very draining, because all you feel like you're doing is you're logging in, looking at a spreadsheet, you're putting in some data, and then that's it. There's no fulfillment in your work anymore because you're just ticking a box. So I think it's really draining. It doesn't allude to any sort of passion. It's for me personally, kind of like such creativity out of you. Like sometimes I'm like, I need to mix it up when I'm doing, it's a fun game. You might need to like mix up a little bit because it's just a lot of you almost feel like a robot.
And let me like, just out of interest, like, what would you do to mix things up a bit? Like, what would be the things that you would have done where you'd be like, oh God, I can't do any more of this Excel. I just need to data stuff. I just need to do something else. Like, what would that look like?
I'll write a blog, an article to go out to employees, or to go externally, maybe talking about anything, just maybe educating on recycling or educating on really is circularity, because it's a really big word. I can tell you how I think about it. So I would say end up writing, because obviously seeing numbers all the time, sometimes writing quite helps. But also talking to people, I'd be like, okay, I really had this idea that I thought of the other day to go and ask this person. I want to go see if I can get some time in their calendar. Let's have a conversation, just to cut the noise and sort of break out of the pencil pushing sort of life.
It's I can just envisage it now. And I should say, you and I have been LinkedIn friends for LinkedIn. Do you know what? That's one of my New Year's resolutions. I am going to refer to my LinkedIn friends. I'm not going to call my LinkedIn connections anymore. I think it's much nicer to be friends.
That's a good point. I like that. LinkedIn. I like that.
LinkedIn friends. So yeah, I know we've been LinkedIn friends for a while. I definitely record some of your articles that have been great to engage with. But if you were to sort of pitch, if you like, the perfect experience for, an in-house sustainability officer in terms of the way that department would be viewed and the way it would be supported by leadership, what does that look like? What are the key characteristics? Because I think, let me just throw my thought into it before I come back to the question that I've just asked. But for me, it's almost that thing of like, if everybody understands that there is more of a reporting requirement that's just part of the modern age of sustainability, that's almost okay, as long as one, the organization fully supports the sustainability function in delivering that, which might mean we need additional resource or we need investment in AI tools or et cetera to help us do this. But secondly, as you kind of alluded to before, it's what does this reporting actually mean? What does it do? If we use it simply to address our regulatory requirements, that's not enough. We need our senior leadership to take this reporting and do something meaningful with it within the organization. Talk to me about what other kind of key characteristics for you there are when it comes to an organization supporting its sustainability function.
Yeah, so I think it's also how they view sustainability, your sustainability function. It's maybe seeing sustainability as maybe value creators, and then being these people that are going to tick a box for you. I think there's a lot of value in sustainability. I mean, people have quoted like billions of dollars investment that will be put into sustainability. So I think if you see sustainability professionals as your value creators, that changes the game almost immediately, because you can drop them in any scenario and they'll find a way to do things better.
So we're living in the kind of the age of the ESG backlash. And obviously there's lots of question marks about, is it, isn't it? Like, what role has Trump had? All this sort of stuff. But is there an opportunity now that if we are clearing the decks of those that were always investing in sustainability just from a performative, tokenistic perspective, and that actually now what we're going to have left is all the organizations that genuinely do see sustainability as a value creation opportunity? Does that mean that are we about to hit a golden age of experience for sustainability professionals working in-house, whereby actually they are going to be really valued because they're going to be working for those organizations that clearly do really care?
Yeah, I think it is a fair observation. I think generally, for what I've seen, even people who have maybe cleared complete sustainability teams, versus people who have like said, no, we really care about this, let's keep this going. You see totally different trajectories of those people, not from regulations, not from reporting, but from who ends up being their customers. Like, I think everything comes back to how you interact with people. Who are the people that you have around you? Who is buying into your products? And you're going to find, especially in the younger generation, a lot of people want to buy things for good. They want to buy less. They want to do good and be better and be more responsible. So they're looking for almost like a partner in that product that's also doing that. So you have to remember that even if you take it all away, are you actually going to have to take it all away? Maybe not.
What do you think will ultimately happen when it comes to the reporting side of things? Like, what's your like longer term view of how reporting and innovative kind of, practice, etc. How are those two things going to relate to each other moving forward in the next sort of 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I think the reporting is going to scale down, but scale down in the sense of we're not going to ask everything under the sun anymore. We're going to what we need to ask. And what we need to ask, that data will be the foundation of how we then look at places that we have available to innovate. I think that's where the connection is going to come in. So I think reporting will have a place because it will show you maybe gaps, rooms for improvement, but it will be really way more narrowed down to what's really important that we should be asking, like those real levers. But then on the other side is when we do create these innovation projects, we'll have data that's really credible to back up what we're doing and why we're doing it. It will no longer be a thing in the air sort of scenario. It's like, we can believe in this innovative solution because we see where this doesn't work, that doesn't work, and where this can then help. Yeah. So I think that connection is what I see is going to be really strong in the next 5 years.
That's really interesting. So we'll almost like look back on this period in this decade as being that time when, as you say, it was the sort of, the alphabet salad sort of situation. There was just so much to do and there were so many requirements. And we ultimately went from that to being much more streamlined, being much simpler, being more uniform around the world, and therefore entered into a new age of kind of effective reporting where there was a real sort of benchmark. So I love that. That's a very hopeful position to be with, which I'll take on myself. Let's conclude now. I'm interested to see, I've sort of taken a couple of magic wands from you already, but interesting to see what you do with your official one. Kelsey, if I was to hand you a magic wand and you could change one thing about the commercial world this instant, what would that one thing be?
I think to rename sustainability departments to value making departments. I think that would be my magic wand. So, I mean, a lot of things change when you tell the story differently. And you can see that in other instances, other industries completely. So I think if I had a magic wand, I will scrap sustainability as a word and probably put in value maker, change maker, something like that instead.
When thinking about a typical senior leader, C-suite exec, like what, if that just happened like overnight now, what happens in boardroom discussions on Monday?
So I think it becomes more about problem solving rather than, can you just come tick this box for me because I got this request from a customer. I think it more becomes, we've got this sort of backlog for this product because we don't have the component anymore. It's not being made, it's being made somewhere else. Okay, then your value maker could be like, well, actually, what about all this install that we've got to get rid of? How can we use that? It becomes more about problem solving. I think you will see a lot of C-suite probably relying on rather than to the side. It's more like, I've got a problem, we need to make more money. Okay, how can I help you make more money? How can I create that value for you? But knowing there's going to be a lot of different foundations and principles I'm bringing to the table that might be economic, that might be about social, that might be about environment, but I'm still creating the value. I'm solving a problem, but I've created it with value that's beyond just money, but value that is more holistic.
I think it's brilliant. I think what it does is it starts talking the language of C-suite. It moves it away from, oh yeah, that nice thing that used to be CSR that essentially is that bolt-on that we don't really need to be doing. It's not mission critical, et cetera, and makes it, well, of course, value creation is at the very heart of what we're doing as senior leaders within the organization. So surely we'd listen to our value creation department and their views on things. Kelsey, as expected, that was a brilliant Magic Wand suggestion. I think we fully endorse that. And thank you so much for joining me today. I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but it was a really good conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. It was great. I really loved it. A lot of magic ones I didn't even think about and thought about. So that's quite cool.
Love it. Thank you. And that's all for today's episode of The Responsible Edge. A big thank you to Kelsey Parsons for joining me on today's show. As a reminder, this episode was brought to you by TrueMark, the mark of trusted communications. Visit truemark.com to learn more. I'm Charlie Martin. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. See you next time.